Just a brief clip from conservative resurgence, copied off YouTube.
Sicknick was rushed to the hospital and placed on life support. He died on Thursday evening. The law enforcement officers now tell CNN that there was no fire extinguisher blow, no bloody gash, and no blunt force trauma to Sicknick's body when he died. Not only that, but it is increasingly unclear when, where, and if Sicknick was even rushed to the hospital at all. You see, as it turns out, multiple hours after the protest had already concluded, Sicknick texted his own brother, Ken, that evening, saying he was basically fine, other than being pepper sprayed twice, confirming he was safe and, quote, in good shape. Then an odd thing happened. The next afternoon, the Sicknick family began getting phone calls that Officer Brian Sicknick had been declared deceased. The phone calls didn't come from the hospital. They didn't come from the treating physicians. They didn't come from the U.S. Capitol Police or the FBI or the DOJ. They came from the media reporters. You see, certain privileged media personnel were evidently the first to receive sensitive information circulating among, quote, law enforcement officials that Brian Sicknick was dead. But then the story got even stranger. In a dark, twisted echo of Monty Python's Bring Out Your Dead scene, it turned out Sicknick was not dead yet. The U.S. Capitol Police responded in a public statement late that Thursday evening that swirling media reports were untrue. Sicknick was still alive. 1 hour later, as Sicknick's family rushed to the hospital to see what they believed was their beloved Brian still fighting for his life, the Capitol Police issued a further statement. Now, Sicknick was dead. But even that statement contained a curious detail. Ken Sicknick had been told his brother collapsed inside the Capitol building and was rushed to the hospital. Wikipedia's entry on Sicknick still has this as the official story. But the U.S. Capitol Police statements that night told a different story. He had returned to his office at the police division first. Sometime between Sicknick being fine, healthy, and back in his office on Wednesday night, and dead, or effectively dead, on early Thursday evening, Sicknick apparently suffered a stroke. And you see, the sequence of when and how that happened should be the easiest part of this story to put to bed. And yet we're being told to take this on faith, or, as the media like to say, without evidence. And then, of course, the story gets even weirder. Active Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen says the DOJ will, quote, spare no resources in getting to the bottom of what happened to Sicknick. Yet, well over a month after his death, precisely zero information has been disclosed by the DOJ, the FBI, the U.S. Capitol Police, the D.C. Medical Examiner, the hospital that cared for him, or the treating physicians. So, 1 full month after Sicknick's death, no autopsy has been released. For reference, autopsies take just 2 to 4 hours to perform, and preliminary results are typically available within 24 hours. Investigators are vexed by a lack of evidence that could prove someone caused his death. Authorities have viewed videotape and photograph that show Sicknick engaging with rioters amid the siege, but have yet to identify a moment in which he suffered his fatal injuries. Ominously, no findings from the D.C. Medical Examiner have been released. No announcements have been made by authorities about the ongoing process. It's kind of interesting that the U.S. Capitol building is one of the most video-surveilled buildings on the planet. And yet no internal video footage has been released by federal authorities or has been promised to be made available. Unannounced to anyone, Sicknick's remains turned up in an urn inside a coffin. Sicknick's body has been cremated. That obviously means no further forensic analysis can be done to establish the cause or time of Sicknick's death. Why, one must wonder, would a family still searching for answers, who has no autopsy results, no death certificate, and no medical report, authorize a cremation? Or did they? Okay, so Narrative 2.0, strategic ambiguity and rhetorical conflation. With Narrative 2.0 turning into a total mainstream media hoax, a bald-faced lie the size and phrenology of Brian Steller's head, the globalist American empire media is transitioning to Narrative 2.0, strategic ambiguity and rhetorical conflation. Sicknick was killed by a MAGA mob. Sicknick died after sustaining injuries while physically engaging with protesters, per the Capitol Police. They've silently removed the by and added a while and a with, then reframed the entire clause in a passive tense so 90% of readers conflate what happened and just move on. But, quote, injured while physically engaged is like dying with COVID. Even if you die in a motorcycle crash, they count it. It's a trick. But using this framing device, the mimetic energy of narrative 1.0, the brazen lie, is preserved, without readers hard forking to a more accurate narrative that describes what investigators really believe happened that day. We'll explore more disturbing questions in part 2 of this explosive investigative series. Stay tuned, I'll bring you part 2 of this series as soon as possible. It's going to get weird. Once again, most of this came by way of revolver.news. If you liked it, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't, leave a comment down below. There's a PayPal link in the description box, so please put $1 in the bucket on the way out the door. I'd like to thank everybody for all your donations. They're much needed and much appreciated. Now, with all that being said, we'll see you next time.
Come on, move. Move. Easy, easy.
That was conservative. You can see it up there, upper left. I just copied it off of YouTube. Thought it was interesting. Another Jeffrey Epstein situation. Who knows what happened? The government is rotten. If you don't believe that, I got a bridge for sale.